My name is Tina, and as you just heard, I'm from Denmark. I'm an entrepreneur, and I wanted to talk about creating teams that can innovate, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're in the same position as you guys are, which is that you have to compete on very limited resources all the time. So you're living in a world where you're up against brands that have more money than you, they have better resources, and there's new stuff coming all the time. And I think that one thing you learn when you're a startup and you're an entrepreneur is how to be extremely agile in doing that, because you're just always starting with much less cards on your hands than everyone else. And I think that perhaps that's something that can be helpful for you guys as well. So Everplaces, which is my current company, is the fourth company that I run. I have started one company that was sold. I've run another couple of companies that are still going. And I left them to start Everplaces because I thought that this could be much bigger than all the other ones. And right now it's being used in around 90 countries. And we've built this with a very small team, and we've built this with practically no resources. And that's kind of where I want to start from. So when you're thinking about how to build a team that can innovate, I think we have to go back to the fundamentals, because innovation really is fundamentals. I think people are in such a hurry to come with diagrams and management theories, and if you put them this and you ask this kind of questions, but the thing is that that's not where you start. You start with that first you have to create the kind of ambience that allows people to be innovative. And the first thing is that people need to be happy. And it's really simple, right? That of course happy people produce better results. But how many companies start there? Most companies just start by saying, these are the 5 people that are in the team. Let's put them in a room, or if it's fancy, let's put them in a retreat and they can sit out by the water. And then bizarrely they're surprised when nothing amazing comes out of it. The way to get people happy first, the research actually shows that there's 2 quite simple things. People have to like their colleagues, and they have to see that they're doing visible progress. And I'm sure you're thinking like, duh, and that's right, and you should, right? Because of course that's what it starts. But actually, that means that if you're in charge of creating some sort of innovation or new thinking, that's where you have to start. You have to try to get the people in your company or in your department to like each other. So how do you do that? Well, one of the things that we do, for example, is that we fire the people who don't fit. And we do that totally unceremoniously, and it's something that I learned in one of the first company that I ran, that because we want to be nice people, we have a tendency to leave people in teams even though they're underperforming. And I don't mean underperforming in terms of how much they produce, I mean in terms of the effect that they have on everyone else. I think that everyone either now or previously has had someone in their team which is a bit of a grump. You know, the kind of person that goes, yeah, we tried that, that's just not gonna work. Or the kind of type who has to talk all the time and who are taking over everyone else's conversations and go, yeah, thanks, Peter, and then we could also do, and then the rest of the people just kind of sit shell-shocked. And what I learned is that actually if you have a team of, let's say, 5, and you have this one person who's kind of ruining it for the other ones, then it's actually undemocratic not to fire that person. Because we're always thinking of the one, but actually there are 5 people that are suffering. At Zappos, one of the great leaders in innovation and happiness, they pay people to quit. So the first couple of months, if you don't like your job and you don't think it's amazing, then you can actually get paid to resign. And why are they doing that? Of course, they're saying that there's a culture here, and we only want people who fit that culture, and sometimes we hire wrong people, and if we do, that's okay, but you shouldn't stay here because you can't pay the mortgage, and those are the wrong reasons. They only want people who are super passionate about it. And they would rather pay than have you sitting there. I think I would be a little insulted if someone asked me that if I would please quit and then they would pay me. But I guess we have to think about the bigger picture. When we started Everplaces, I'd already started a couple of companies before, and I knew that the first few years would be really tough, and I didn't want the kind of syndrome where you're sitting 2 people in a basement and it's dark and gloomy and you don't have any money, and you know, like, I mean, Friday drinks with 1 person or 2 people, it's crap, right? So I thought, okay, how can we build some community? And then I started something called Founders House. So Founders House is a co-working space for like tech entrepreneurs in Copenhagen. There's 18 startups in there now. And I knew that, okay, now we have Friday drinks, tick. Because now we have like 100 people under the same room, and they're all dynamic and innovative. And why are they? Because I created this place. So again, I can pick out the ones that don't fit. So in order to come into to Founders House, you don't just have to be ambitious and web and mobile and a startup. You also have to be a cool and nice person. Because I've just learned the really, really hard way what it does to the culture if you have a couple of people who don't fit. Because they change it for everyone. You know how it is. If you come in and you go like, oh, good morning, and the guy goes, it's like you don't continue coming in saying good morning very many more times than that. So it spreads. The other thing that I have learned is that you can actually create superstars. So apart from not having enough resources, one of the things that all of us are often complaining about is that I just don't have the right people in my team to do this. And the really tough truth in this is that we're never going to have all the right people in our team. Because you're just not going to be in that kind of situation. There's always going to be, they're doing something else, you don't have enough money, you're not working on something that's sexy enough, so we have to live with that. And we have to try to create superstars. And we have this rule that is that you hire slow and you fire fast. And we also hire for attitude and train for skills. So that means that I would much rather take in someone who doesn't have any experience in the field, but who's just beaming with passion and really wants to do something in this field, because they're always going to outperform. Because let's assume that you hire smart, intelligent people, right? I mean, no one hires stupid people in here, right? That means that they will be able to learn. So if you hire young ones, you can also, or people that come from another industry, you also have the beautiful advantage that you can train them to fit your culture. And that can really be quite a big advantage, that they live and work in this dream that you wanted to build. The other things that there are, of course, a couple of rules that we have to look by, and that is that we have to give them influence and ownerships. If we want people to turn into really great people, they're not going to accept us telling them what to do. We need to give them a chance to shine, and then we need to let them work with other people that are quite good. And a rule in when you're doing all of this that most people find a little bit odd is that when I hire, I don't even look at their papers. So I don't care if you have a degree. Because you know what? In places like Sweden and Denmark, everyone has a degree. It means nothing that you've been able to sit on your ass, pardon my French, for 5 years and turn up. I don't even know if you've turned up any other days than the day you had to do your exams. So that doesn't matter. Instead, what I look for is some way that I can see that these are really passionate, engaged people. And the way I do that is I look at what have they done for free that they didn't have to. So I don't know how it is in Sweden, but in Denmark it's not that common that people volunteer. So the ones that have volunteered to do something are passionate people. And it doesn't actually really matter to me whether you've been training Little League or football training, or whether you are a visitor friend to someone's grandmother at an old person's home. It doesn't matter. Anything that you've done because you wanted to. It can also be that you have a little blog that you've built up to something. A lot of the ones that we take are people who are engaged in the startup scene, because then I know that they have the bug, right? And they want to work hard. So all these people who are in the volunteer startup organizations, who are working their asses off to create events and cool stuff, getting no pay, often getting no thanks, these people are different. They want to make it different. So those I will hire any day over someone who has a great degree. And mostly I don't even look at it. This is one of my favorite parts of it, how to motivate people, because I think that we've really gotten it wrong. So Everplaces right now has managed to get to where we are in these 90 countries with 10 people. And only about half of these 10 people get paid. So that means that actually on top of these, we have 54 people who are ambassadors who are sitting around the world. They're in 21 countries and who are working and they're spreading the word and they're doing like customer service on Twitter in their own language and answering questions, and they're doing all of that for us for free because they care about it. And I think that kind of kills one of these old things that we always had, that people will need to be well paid in order to be very productive. Today that's simply not true. I mean, it's actually been scientifically proven that if people are underpaid, meaning that they can't meet their financial requirements, then they are stressed and unproductive. But as soon as they hit that level, which means that now they are comfortable, then it has no impact on their productivity. And I think it opens for like a whole world of challenges, because that it means that now when I have to put jobs out, especially the ones that are not paid, I have a challenge to say, how can I create a job that's so interesting that you would like to do it for free? And now we've just created a culture where practically everyone starts working for free, and then if they're willing to work hard enough, then maybe they become a part of the company and then start getting paid. And that's really harsh, and sometimes people say to me that's like taking advantage of people, but it's not. Really ambitious, intelligent people should want to invest in their future, because we will also give them much better opportunities. I mean, people who work with us have responsibility and they have their own deadlines and they can do things the way they do it. They don't have any boss telling them where to be or what to do or how to do things. And most people would rather work like that. The thing that Dan Pink, who came up with this autonomy, master, and purpose, found out that these are the 3 key motivators. Autonomy means that if people get to decide how they do things, then they are more happy. So say that you're in charge of getting social media up and you guys have decided together that Facebook is the way to go. Then the way to go it would be to say to that guy, hey, what do you think is reasonable by the end of the month? Can we agree that you can double our participation on Facebook? And he's a part of setting these goals himself. And then this person has to figure out how to do that. And I can tell you what, it also makes your job a hell of a lot easier. In the beginning, I think it was hard. For me, it was really hard. I'm one of these like really busy people who would like to be involved with everything. And it kills me sometimes that people are not doing it this brilliant way that I've thought of, right? But actually, in time, I found out that 50% of the times we're doing it in a different way, but it works just as well. And most of the times, it works better. So I guess it's the kind of humility that comes when having done this for a few times. But you get to set the task, and your people should be driven by results, and how they get to those results should be their job. The other thing is mastery. So it's deeply embedded in human beings that we want to be good at stuff. How many people play an instrument? Does anyone pay you to get good at playing that instrument? I'm sure there's a couple of neighbors that will pay you not to practice that instrument, right? So people also spend years learning to sing and how to paint, and no one gets anything from that, but it's just so deep in us that I would just really like to become good at painting watercolors. And that's because we just have that. So if you can try and find stuff where someone is responsible for a particular thing and they can become really good at it, and especially if you have a chance to like point out their expertise and say like, ooh, great job, Magnus, we just found out this other way that this can be done, and nice to see you getting a bit of an expert there, then people grow, right? They're like, fuck yeah, that was great, and you know, I rock at this. And that's how you want them to walk home. You want them to walk home thinking, I rock. The third thing is purpose. And this means that no one wants to work because your company has decided that profits should increase 6.5% next year. That is simply not motivating, right? And that comes down to this. You have to be on a mission. I think that everyone should sit down and say, what is my crusade? So you guys are on a crusade to change something. And that's what's going to make people follow you. So I'm a really firm believer in that by the time people come to you, assuming you don't use child labor, right? By the time people come to you, then they will already have formed their world beliefs. And you can't really change how they are. So what you're supposed to try to do is have your worldviews be so clear that people who already follow them want to join you. So in Everplaces, for example, we have some worldviews that say that everything new is good. People who use Everplaces like new stuff. They like to try new restaurants and go to nice hotels. And so that's a really deep belief in them. They also believe that travel enriches them. Travel makes them a part of who they are. And that means that when we come with a quest saying that we want to transform travel information and we want people to be able to get better experiences, they go like, yep, yeah, that's me, that's me. And it's because we are basically picking a vision that they already had and just feeding into it. Some of the people who've done this really well are Apple, right? Apple are always being brought out, think differently. And it's very easy now to say, yeah, okay, that's also quite easy when you're making like cool little, sex in boxes, right? But the thing is that when Apple started, there was nothing sexy about Apple, right? I mean, the Apple I and the Apple II were horrendous, and it was like, people would want their personal computer. What are you talking about? Like, it was the uber geekish thing when Apple started it. But they had this vision that they wanted to change the way that people could work, and they wanted people to have a personal computer. And enough people bought that worldview that they created it. And this is the same with your consumers. Your employees are the same. You're not catering for everyone, because if you're trying to cater for everyone, you'll hit no one perfectly. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we, for example, wanted to change travel information, because so I want a restaurant in Berlin and you're giving me one for kids, one for meetings, one that's vegetarian, and one that's like gay and lesbian. How many people does that hit perfectly? No one, because they're trying to cater for everyone. Another one, which is my favorite example, is Virgin. So Virgin, especially 10 years ago, was one of the sexiest brands around. And they went in and changed industries like banking. So if there's anyone sitting there thinking that they have an unsexy product to start with, and that's an unfair disadvantage, then think about banking. They went in and said, like, the other banks are thieves. They're killing you in fees and charges. It's non-transparent. Let's, free the world from bank charges, and people should have insight. And enough people from the banking system in England thought that was so fantastic that they wanted to join that crusade. So it can be done even if you have a boring topic. And when you get to this point, then I think that's when you start to be able to make magic, right? Because then you have a couple of people in a room. You've taken out the sulky one in the corner. You've created enough of an atmosphere that people like each other. You've probably organized a few do's that involve alcohol, because here in the Nordics, social stuff works best with alcohol. And if you want 50 people to get to know each other with no other tool, I would really suggest that. And actually, it's a big part of my personal brand now, which I'm sure my mother is not that happy about, is that my companies do a lot of stuff that have to do with alcohol. We throw champagne parties. So then every couple of times a year, I'll buy 150 bottles of champagne and then invite all the cool people we know and put up a DJ in the corner and then have a massive party. And it's one of these parties where it says, like, it's open-ended, and there'll be robots live streaming it, and you can open the phone with your smartphone and all this crazy stuff, because people think it's fun, and they like to go back to their colleagues and their friends and say, like, where I work, we can open and shut the windows with this device that's connected to a thing in the ceiling that when you finish a bottle of champagne, it opens, right? Those are the kind of thing that makes people talk. And it doesn't have to cost very much money. And the point is that you have to be a part of doing it. So I used to be the CEO of Venture Cup in Denmark, and probably a lot of you guys know Venture Cup. It's the startup competition at the universities. And when I was there, a lot of my staff were students. So I figured out what is the best way to inspire students. Beer. right? And instead of just being like, oh, we're the boring thing and you sit around the table and you can have 2 beers, I made sure that it was like the way that students would do it. So me, even though that I was the CEO and has the fancy title, would be the one going down to the supermarket and then buying so much beer that I had to steal one of the trolleys, right? And then going back all the way to the office on the cobbled stone with all these beers. And when you have student workers, they welcome you like a hero when you come with 90 warm beers, right? Even though that they're all foamy and fluffy. But it's important that you do it yourself. That it's not like there's nothing that you are too important to do. Because in the new world, bosses take blame when something goes wrong, but when something goes right, they pass on the credit. And bosses do a lot of the boring stuff. And the easiest way I found to get people to feel that it's okay, that they have to do part of the boring stuff, is to do it myself. You know, so I'll make a bit of a noise about it that, okay, yeah, I'm just going out to buy more printer paper. You know, did everyone hear it? Kind of because then I know that next time when I ask someone else to go buy printer paper, and this is how glorious it is to be a CEO in a startup, right? Then they won't mind. The last thing that I want to talk about in terms of the step is that it's really often the journey. And I think that when we're really trying to create innovation, this is what we're missing, or this is what the big companies sometimes miss. They think that they can point to a couple of people and put them in a room. If you're lucky, then it's a hotel retreat. It's probably just your meeting room with white walls. And then they can say, could you maybe come up with a brilliant product that can revolutionize the mobile industry? Yeah, sure, let me just start here. The thing is that there is no result. You don't know what the result is. So this is actually about the journey. And if you're running a team like this, I would go out and tell to people, try to make as many mistakes as you can as quickly as possible. So they say that Edison took 1,000 goes to invent the light bulb, right? And he said that I didn't fail. I just found 999 ways that don't work. And I think that's what we do, certainly. So we test everything. So in Everplaces, we'll build buttons that don't exist. So then when people click on it, it says like, oh, thanks for telling us you wanted that function. We were wondering that. And we'll also ask people on the street and go like, okay, if you had the choice between these, and we'll do different landing pages so that you find out, like, we put different words and then we see what people click on. The thing is that we have been in this game long enough to realize that we don't know. We don't really know what it is that people want. And you shouldn't expect yourself to know either. The only thing that you can do is to go out on a journey and then you can learn. And our journey happened in the way that first we built this service where people who care about quality can bookmark nice locations. This is the mobile version of cutting out articles in travel magazines, right? Ooh, when I go to Morocco, I want to go there. I don't know how many of you guys can find those articles when you need them, but we definitely couldn't. So we built it on mobile. Then we found out that, there's a lot of people who want this, but there's actually even more people who don't want to bookmark stuff themselves. So then we started selling niche travel guides because we could see that people, when they're going to Göteborg, just wants to know where are the good places to eat. Göteborg with kids, Göteborg for gay and lesbian, Göteborg for street art. That's what people want. They just want small collections that fit them. And then as we were doing all of this, and this is going quite well, we realized that there's actually some people who more want help. And that is all the brands who are trying to get through with messages on mobile, but this is crazy expensive. So now we just built this new technology, which means that people can build apps, like travel brand apps, on a subscription. So it hardly costs any money. So now everyone can afford to build an app. So you're going to hear in one of the next talks that sometimes the best advertising doesn't look like advertising. And I think that's true. We all need to get better at building stuff that people like and associate with. And that's how they become to trust us, and that's how they buy stuff later. But that's the second step, not the first. So for us, changing the way that people build apps and empowering like the 95% who couldn't afford apps before, that can maybe change an industry. So I guess I'll finish by saying, for you guys, what is the question that you can ask, and how perhaps can you change your industry? Thanks.
Bravo!